Hey, everybody, welcome to FL Teams Live. We've got your power rankings after another exciting week in the NFL, Week 15. With me, as always, is Jeremiah Hensley, host of Fins in the Sea here on FL Teams. And I'm Jeff Macolino. I host Bolts and Bats in the Bay, which cover the two winning teams in Tampa Bay. Uh, on that
Starting
note,
early.
yeah, right. I can't help myself. On that note, let me tell you about our sponsor for this episode. Our newest partner is revolutionizing the world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports. Download the Symbol app. That's SIMBULL, and use the code FL Teams to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Again, it's Symbol right underneath me now. And the promo code is FL Teams, which is under me right now. So go ahead, get signed up, get your free team stock. Jeremiah, you ready to roll through the bottom half of the league?
Let's do this, man. We got some movement this week.
God, I got to tell you, we can look back at this when the season's over. But if you showed this list to us 16 weeks ago, we both would laugh and say this is some crackpot, idiot who put this thing together.
It's been that kind of year, bud.
Yeah, it is something. Let's start things off with our brand new number 32 team. They really deserved it. So much so that on my ballot, I ranked them 33rd for a reason. The Indianapolis Colts are
You can't
now
call
in the
that the
basement.
Houston Texans spot anymore. We were just going to name it the Memorial Houston Texans. So the Colts had to get something.
At least for 1 week, the Colts have taken that spot. We'll see if they can get out of it. Number 31, the Texans didn't go far. They did get to overtime against the Chiefs and promptly just didn't want to win their game.
Yeah.
Number 30, the struggling Arizona Cardinals. Number 29, the Chicago Bears. Number 28, the team that does much better with Russ Wilson not on the field, the Denver Broncos. Number 27, the Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams, eliminated from the playoffs already. Number 26, the Atlanta Falcons. Funny stat about the Falcons I'll mention in a little bit. Number 25, the Carolina Panthers. Number 24, the New Orleans Saints. Number 23, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the lowest ranked Florida team. Number 22, the Cleveland Browns. Number 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers. After their 4-0 record against the NFC South, they've boosted themselves up to number 21. Number 20, the Green Bay Packers, who are kind of hanging in the wild card race a little bit. Number 19, the Seattle Seahawks, who are getting out of the wild card race as fast as they can. Speaking of trying to get out of the playoffs, number 18, the Tennessee Titans show up and, boy, finding new ways to lose. Number 17, the New England Patriots, who gave us a delightful finish to the day games on Sunday. We'll talk about that maybe in a second, but let's talk about the lowest ranked team in the state of Florida, still winning the NFC South by a game over the three other teams. The Bucs, number 23. You could do a super cut of me talking about the Bucs since about week 3, probably. Mm-hmm. And well, first of all, I'll say looks like I've been proven correct. Second of all, I'll say this is a bad football team. There's no two ways about it. They're not good on their bottom 5 scoring offense in the league. The quarterback that everyone praises so much, he's in the bottom half of starting quarterbacks and quarterback rating. My last note on the Bucs is I was going downtown Sunday morning and the Uber driver just started unprovoked complaining about how awful the Bucs were and how they have no weapons. They're too old. They should have blown it all up and rebuilt this year. instead of waiting, because now it's going to be even worse next year. And that's just an Uber driver who I didn't even mention anything about football to. So here we are. Jeremiah, what do you think about those Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Dude, all year I've been saying, oh, they'll turn it on. They'll turn it on. They're veterans. They'll turn it on. But here's the point, man. Carolina's pushing strong. Your Saints are still right there. Atlanta, everybody's within one game of them in that division right now. And Atlanta found some life. I mean, Tyler Algier, he played really well. They're on a 3-game losing streak. They've played tight. But, you look at Tampa's lost 2 in a row. The Saints are the only one that are coming off a win right now. And the Saints defense is great. You've still got time to make that. It's a very real possibility that this team gets what they deserve pretty much, right? And gets knocked out of the playoffs. 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Saints. The Panthers had a big opportunity last week to beat a beatable team against the Steelers. This week, they're hosting the white-hot Detroit Lions. And the Bucs are getting the Kyler Murray, and I don't know if Colt McCoy is even going to be playing for the Cardinals. So they're getting a really decimated Cardinals team that is scuffling right now. So
the
McCoy
Bucs is out. Trace McSorley will officially get his first NFL start.
So yeah,
Trace McSorley play in Penn State.
Yeah. Well, the last quarterback who got his first start against Tom Brady did okay. But
you never know, right?
Yeah, it's the Bucs. Look, they got handed a cake division this year. That's and someone on Good Morning Football said, "Boy, if Mark Ingram, I don't care what's going on with his knee, if he just falls forward and gets the first down, the Bucs are out of it right now." And the Saints really have a stranglehold on the division at 6-8 at that point, but not meant to be for the NFC South this year. And unless of course it's my team. Boy, I hope they don't steal a playoff game, even though it'll be funny if it's the Cowboys.
That would be great. Look, the rest of this bottom, it gets very interesting because, again, we speak about this is a fun time of the year. You've got your horses up front who are making a run, and now the bottom feeders got to start making decisions, right? So Jeff Saturday hasn't been in Indianapolis long. Jonathan Taylor twists his ankle, throw him on IR. You're done for the year. This one's a wash.
Nick Foles is getting the start. Finally.
Come in behind that and bench Matt Ryan, and Nick Foles finally, like you said, he's not going back to our Texas boy. So they're making some changes. You saw Atlanta, in that bottom half switch to Devin Ritter, and all of that.
He didn't look good.
No, he didn't. He looked like the game was he looked like he was playing Madden on expert level, and it was his first game. It was just too fast for him, It was just bad. And now the Titans, it looks like they could be without Tannehill for the rest of the season, which means Malik Willis is your guy, which I think is trouble because Tannehill, I love him. He's an average quarterback, but you had to respect what he was doing, throwing the ball. Malik, you really don't. So you can really stack the box on them now. A lot of interesting matchups in that and what's going on in the bottom half. Don't know Seattle sliding as fast as they are. Green Bay's trying to stick around on Christmas Day. My Dolphins are on a 3-game slide, and we got to play those Packers.
That's turned into a more interesting game. I want to get into that when we get to the Dolphins too, because looking at the Packers, the teams ahead of them in the playoff race in the NFC. The Cowboys, or I'm sorry, not the Cowboys, that are battling for the spots. The Commanders are scuffling. The Seahawks are on a free fall. They both also have some harder games ahead of them than the Packers do. The Packers' hardest game is this coming up here against the Dolphins on the rest of their schedule, probably.
Yeah, Seattle can't find a way to get anything done. They're falling on their face. Detroit's white hot. I think Detroit's going to get one of those spots. And I think that's awesome. Dan Campbell, if you guys weren't exposed to Dan Campbell and anybody missed it, I saw him when he was in Miami, just as an interim coach. Go watch Hard Knocks. find a way, man. Stream it, rip it, whatever. Watch Hard Knocks and get an idea about who Dan Campbell is, and you'll get behind this Detroit Lions team because he's a pure dude, man. He is a pure dude, and
something about him, because one critique people made, and someone again, an analyst on mainstream network, I forget which one, or I'd give him credit, made this point. Is they said, well, a lot of people are saying Dan Campbell's just a motivational speaker for a trash team, a regular season guy. He was the assistant head coach to Sean Payton when the Saints made pretty significant playoff runs for 4 straight years from 17 to 20. He's been to the NFC Championship game, should have gone to the Super Bowl. I think he probably is going to be able to handle himself in these big late season games. He's not just a rah-rah, preseason, early season guy. I think he's going to be more equipped than people realize for the playoffs.
And you know what? It's funny that even that would be the critique, right? Because I can tell you, as a guy who's been in management with sales or other things, like in the NFL, the margin of talent is so small, right? You can say trash team, whatever, but how really talent-wise, how much worse are the Lions? When you have that motivator who gets these people to step up and start to believe, it closes that gap. And that's what you're seeing. So, and Campbell's not going to get tired. He's going to be barking the same way in the Lions' last game as he did during their first preseason practice, right? So they're going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. With that, we know the Lions are in the top half. How high did we rank them? Let's take a look at the top half of the rankings here, starting at number 16 with the Las Vegas Raiders. Number 15, the Washington Commanders, who had a rough game and then some rough officiating luck as well. Number 14, the surging Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're the only team in our top half. No, they're the only team in our top 15 with a losing record currently. Just ahead of them is number 13, the New York Jets. Number 12, the New York Giants. Number 11, the Baltimore Ravens. Number 10, the Miami Dolphins. Number 9, the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 8, the Minnesota Vikings remain at number 8 despite their comeback. And who's ahead of them? Number 7, the Detroit Lions. Number 6, the Dallas Cowboys, who coming off a loss against the Jaguars. Number 5, Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Number 4, Kansas City Chiefs, who took overtime to beat the Texans. Number 3, the surging Cincinnati Bengals. They got a first place vote this week, by the way. Number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a first place vote, by the way. And number 1, the Buffalo Bills, who also only got one first place vote, but they do take the number 1 spot in the power rankings after a pretty exciting game against the Dolphins in what turned into a snowstorm at the end. Let's start with the Jaguars and work our way up here a little bit. The Jaguars, I think we said this before we went on. We said in the preseason, hey, we wouldn't be shocked if they competed for the playoffs. But we didn't expect the Colts and the Titans to be as trash as they are. The schedule, just looking at the schedule for these teams, the Titans are 7-7, the Jaguars are 6-8, and the Jaguars beat the Titans last week. So they're, they've got the tiebreaker currently. The Jaguars' last 3 games, tomorrow they are at the New York Jets. That might be the game of the week for me, to be quite honest. I'm very excited to see that game. Then they play the Houston Texans, and the last game of the season, they host the Tennessee Titans, who may be led by Malik Willis. If the Jags win out, they're 9-8. They win the AFC South. Even if they lose to the Jets, the Titans would need to lose one of their next 2 games, and obviously the Jags need to win that last game against Tennessee. The Titans' next 3, Houston, who hey, they've been playing teams tough, and the Titans have been playing like really bad. Their best game was their loss to the Chargers this past week. Their best game for a while. I think they've lost 4 straight now. Then they go to Dallas, where they host Dallas, I believe. I'm sorry. But Dallas, you kind of assume the Titans are going to drop that one. And then travel to Jacksonville, a team that smoked them a week and a half ago. The Jaguars obviously control their own destiny, but I don't know. I think I might give them the odds right now to win the AFC South at 8-9 or 9-8 over the Tennessee Titans.
Especially if it's going to go to Malik Willis. I mean, again, I know Ryan Tannehill well. I watched his entire career, right? From the draft all the way through. He's a good, stable, steady quarterback. And what he was able to do was work off of play action and complete passes when people were worrying about Derrick Henry. Malik Willis isn't the same guy. Malik Willis, you've got to worry about his wheels and his legs. But what that means is you can just further stack the box, right? And it's already the Titans don't have a receiver that's going to go over the top. Their tight end has been leading the way. And that's been your valves, right? I can't even say his name, Kwani something, but he's been a big part of the Titans in the last couple of games. And the Jags are putting it together. You see Trevor Lawrence coming along. They do have playmakers. Christian Kirk is having a great season. A lot of the other receivers are playing well. Travis Etienne is doing. Travis Etienne is doing a lot better as a lead back than a lot of people thought he would. There's still some concerns with ball security and things like that. But, yeah, I think the Jags are in the driver's seat. I mean, look, you got to figure not only are the Titans playing the Cowboys on Thursday night, right? That's coming right after the Cowboys-Eagles game. The Cowboys-Eagles game is going to be a war. So one of two things is going to happen, right? The Cowboys, if they lose that game, are going to come in extra hard, extra fired at the end of the season, and you're going to have a riled up team. If they win that game, they're going to have a lot of either way, the Cowboys are going to be riding some sort of heavy emotion coming into a Thursday night game with the Titans coming off of what should be a coast against the Texans. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But, dude, yeah, this Thursday night football game might be game of the week.
Yeah, it excites me so much because you're looking at so much young talent on the field, and these are both teams competing for the playoffs. Look, the Jets have lost so many close games. Look, we rank the Lions number 7. They squeaked by the Jets. The Bills number 1. They squeaked by the Jets. The Vikings number 8. The Jets almost came back, and honestly, that was the game the Jets absolutely should have won that game.
Yeah.
That one irritated me as an unbiased observer, honestly, just watching the Jets not be able to put the ball in the end zone. And then the Patriots, that game was 3-3, and then they give up a punt return touchdown down the stretch. The Jets, I think, are better than their record.
They're doing it with a quarterback carousel, too. I mean, is it going to be Mike White? Is it going to be Zach?
Wilson made some plays last week.
He did. I think ultimately he's a better quarterback. You just got to get his head right.
I think he's got a much better skill set than Mike White. Mike White, I think, is more of he's got a lower or a higher floor, but definitely a lower ceiling than Zach Wilson.
100%.
Will be interesting to see. I mean, there's so many young star players that are already stars, like Sauce Gardner just announced as a starter in the Pro Bowl.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, there are stars that are already stars, and there are guys like Trevor Lawrence, who's not quite a star yet, but you see it, especially the last couple weeks. You see it coming. I mean, look, he's going to be a star.
If I get sentimental in it for a moment, this is what's awesome about being a long-term fan of not just one team, but of the NFL. Because you get a chance to see this, right? Like we all remember the first time we saw Randy Moss and we were like, whoa, this kid's next, right? We're looking right now at the next generation of the NFL. We're looking at the next 10 years of the NFL, and you see what teams have them now and where they're going to lock them down. But we know the players who are going to be the players, right? The Mahomes, as he goes down, we know who the next one's coming. It's time. And it's it's a weird sort of transitional time because Aaron Rodgers is near the end. Matt Ryan is near the end. Brady should have already been done at the end. You look at Matt Stafford should be close to the end. He says he's coming back, but
the great red rifle.
yeah. You've got all these guys that are fading out and that new talent coming in. I mean, dude, speaking on that, I mean, like, think about this. We all thought it was insanely crazy when the Carolina Panthers just chucked off Christian McCaffrey. And they're like, okay, go ahead. We're like, well, they're throwing in the season, right? And then they knew Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman are great backs. Like, they're running the ball and changing their offense with two guys who are 2 to 3 years in the league. And, you see teams playing smart like Carolina like that, picking up draft picks and seeing them move the way they are. So it's definitely, man, it's interesting. Dude, the ending. You mentioned the Patriots, and we got to talk about the Raiders. I've never in my life. I mean, it seems like New England does this because Miami's hit them a couple times with the Miami Miracle and stuff like that. But you cannot explain to me in any point, shape, or fashion what the logic was to the end of that game. You can't.
There was none. They literally, Stevenson and Myers just kind of lost their minds. There's no other explanation. But I'll say I was fortunate enough to have I was at a friend's house. We were watching these games wind down, and the Raiders had just tied the game, so we assumed, waiting for overtime, and we're screaming like little children when this play happens. When Chandler Jones catches that ball. And then I sat there on my phone. I pulled it up and just listened to John Vilma and Kenny Albert call that play like 15 times. I'm like, this is the most unbelievable. And it's one of the things that's great is Kenny Albert and John Vilma sound like me and my buddy. Like, what is going on? Right? What happened?
Yeah. None of it makes any sense. Like, why? The only time teams go into that is you need that touchdown on the final drive. Like, there was nothing to be gained at all.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't the call.
No,
it definitely wasn't called by the coaches.
And now I'm still a little like rule confused. He intercepted it, which was nice, but technically it's a backward pass.
Yeah.
So had it just bounced, he still could have picked it up and ran it in, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's not technically an incomplete pass then. I mean, he's throwing it backwards, so that becomes
it's a lateral. So
it's a lateral, so it becomes a thumb. The live ball, they could have picked it up and took it. But it looked a hell of a lot better than Chandler Jones caught it.
It was a good hands catch, too.
Oh, yeah, he got him up, dude. That was unbelievable. You wonder with games like that, too. I mean, I don't know right off, but, I mean, the Raiders are hanging around. They're 6-8. They're hanging around, and they've got a lot of talent. So you wonder if a fluke win like that gives them just that next little nudge.
Well, when you're looking at the teams they're chasing, the Patriots have a rough go of things. Yeah, they might not win another game. The Jets, if they can't get past Jacksonville, I don't know that they're gonna.
They got to come to Miami.
Dolphins too. The Dolphins and the Jets. The Dolphins, another team. They're 2 games ahead of the Raiders, but they could possibly drop a couple games and make things interesting. So they're still on the outside looking in, but the Raiders are still alive a little bit. Which I've got to say, as much as you, me, everyone in the entire NFL media has criticized the difference between the AFC and the NFC. It's looking like the playoff, they're going to be about the same. The South Division in both conferences might have a losing team get into the playoffs. It's a decent chance. That last playoff spot's going to probably go to a 9-8 team. It's not going to end up looking like David and Goliath with these 2 conferences. I think the top 3 in the AFC are better than any team in the NFC. The Eagles are 13-1, all due respect, although Jalen Hurts' injury, we don't know what, how much that's going to affect things. But yeah, they're looking, I mean, if you look at our top 10, I think it's 5-5, 5 AFC, 5 NFC.
And you're right. Look, sneaky underneath it all. I really haven't paid so much attention to Cincinnati. They won 6 straight.
And that's the team I ranked number 1. Full disclosure, I did my ballot at 2 a.m.-ish or so. I don't remember doing my ballot, but I reviewed it and I said I like it enough. I was in a much different state than I was when we were broadcasting the Dolphins game Saturday night. I mean, like 10 hours more of what the World Cup was that morning. It was a long Sunday. Let's talk about the Dolphins. They played hard. They had their moments, especially in the beginning of the game where they ran the ball. They kind of abandoned it seemed. And they lost to the team that ends up number 1 in our power rankings. It's not like they lost to a team that they were expected to beat. They were playing in frigid weather. The fourth quarter turned into a snowstorm. The Dolphins, though, it's 3 straight losses, and it's tough to get into the playoffs when you lose 3 games in a row. Now you're playing a Packers team that's starting to believe that if we beat the Dolphins, I think they got the Bears the next week, and then the Lions. And that could be the game for the playoffs is the Packers-Lions in Week 18. So Aaron Rodgers hasn't given up. I thought he, aside from one interception he threw, I thought he looked pretty good Monday night, but the Rams are pretty poor. As Dobbs and Watson are coming around, the rookie receivers. It's not a gimme, I don't think, for the Dolphins against the Packers. The best thing, of course, is that it's in Miami, so they're not dealing with the weather up north, which is going to cause a lot of low-scoring games this weekend. But so talk to me about the state of the Dolphins. Obviously, still in the playoff picture firmly. Well, somewhat firmly, but
they say there's no such thing as a moral victory. A moral victory is still a loss. But I think we talked about it on Saturday night. Miami, again, I see it too much with the Dolphin fans. We forget things, okay? We forget that this is a team that's being coached by a first-time head coach in his first year in the NFL. We forget the turnover in talent on the roster and the new players that have come in. So there's talent there, but this is a team, too, that is still building, right? When you look at the losses on the board, the ones that look bad weren't that bad, right? The San Francisco game ends up 33-17. It wasn't that bad. We give up the 16 points in the second half, and that turns it into that. At halftime, it's 17-10. We're within a touchdown, right? And then we actually get back to within 6 in the fourth quarter, and then it gets out of hand. You lose to San Diego by 1 possession, right? Lose by 6. They were in the fourth quarter. The Bills, they really played well, and to lose to a team that's, if you talk to anybody, all of the experts and the talking heads, they've kind of given the AFC to the Bills. Bills or the Bills or the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins have shown they can play with these teams. I worry about Tua's state of mind after 3 straight losses. I said before on the last Fins in the Sea that I did that this stretch was one of the most important. And I think my words were, they're going to show us who they are. Well, who they are, just lost 3 in a row to teams that are ready to get into the playoffs. That says we're not ready to compete, right? And I was hoping this Green Bay stretch and the Jets and the Patriots would be a nice little whoo-hoo, just finish it up, right? But now that's not the case at all. They're very tough games. And, the last 2 being division games where we're going north. So we're going to New England. We're going to the Jets, right? So 2 more travel. I don't understand why we give up on the run. I don't understand why the tight end's not involved in the offense. Defensively, I think they played well. And I didn't feel bad after the loss, I guess. But I'm worried right now. I've tried to, my very first podcast I did at the beginning of the season, I said, my goal for this Dolphins season is not to ride the roller coaster. I don't want to get too high and I don't want to get too low. And I don't, because that's the history of Dolphin fans. It's what we do. It should be a effing Disney ride, called the Miami Dolphin. And you just, but we're not ready to make a run. We have the talent around us to do it, but the mentality's not there. Just too many small little things. So they're slipping. And on Christmas Day, they need to get their ground back. And we'll see if that happens, man. I don't know anymore, really. I think we've played well enough in the first of the season that we'll still get into the playoffs. The problem is the teams that we're going to be fighting with right now control the tiebreaker over us, right? Right. All of them that we're fighting for those last spots. We're not going to win tiebreakers. So you got to win the games.
Yeah.
You watched a lot of that Dolphins game because we did the stream, man. I mean, that's a guy impartial watching it. What did you see?
I mean, it was definitely their best game in the last 3 weeks. I mean, they showed improvement over, because I watched their whole game against the Niners. We broadcast the game against the Chargers as well. So I've seen the Dolphins a lot lately. I'll say they don't, considering who they've played against, which, look, is probably the class of the AFC, or at least they're in the top 3, the Bills. The Chargers, they're just kind of they're like the Dolphins, frankly. They're 8-6. They're one thing that's interesting with it jumped out to me at the Chargers. I'll get to this in a second. Their point differential on the season. I want to touch on that because we'll talk about the Vikings with that too. But when you and then the 49ers, who are probably right there with the Eagles as far as being the class of the NFC. And look, they were outplayed badly in 2 of those 3 games.
Niners have won 7 in a row. The team that I hate and don't respect. So, I mean, again, not a bad loss, right? I mean,
right. They're games that on the surface, the only one that I would say, the one that stings the most is the Chargers. And frankly, that was probably the Dolphins got outplayed the most in that game.
Yeah.
If you look at it.
Yeah.
The score in that game was a lot closer than what the play on the field really was. Whereas the Bills game, the score was indicative of how close that game was. Either team could have won that game. The Dolphins defense couldn't come up with a stop on that last drive. It was just a long, slow drive down the field. And that's where I worry about the Dolphins is would I personally trust them to go into Buffalo and win a game in the playoffs? No. Go into Kansas City? No. Cincinnati? No. If you're going to win a Super Bowl, you got to go into one of those. And look, right now they'd be the 6 or 7 seed, so they would be going to either Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah. So I do think, it is I don't know if it's a blessing in disguise, assuming they get through it okay. Their last 3 games are against teams competing for the Packers are 1.5 games out. The Jets and the Patriots are only 1 game out of the playoffs. So the Dolphins are going to need to put their foot on the gas pedal. They're not going to be able to coast through these games. So it will be a big confidence boost if they win the next couple. I don't even know if they'd need to put the starters on the field in week 18 against the Patriots. So if they can turn things around on Christmas and then against the Jets, who they're a tough team to beat. Even in the teams that have beat them, I think they'd say they're a tough team to beat. They can get those next 2 games under their belt. I think then they got to feel better about having the momentum back on their side going into a tough playoff matchup.
You mentioned it right there. In essence, the Dolphins playoffs start on Christmas Day because we're playing teams that are fighting for the same spot as we are. You lose those games, and it's a bigger loss than just a regular old loss, right? So in essence, our playoffs start on Sunday, man. I mean, that's what it is. So
yeah. Hey, these games, I mean, obviously a win in the beginning of the season counts the same as a win now, but the weight and what this does to your team weighs a lot heavier. One thing when I was going through my rankings, I sometimes look at point differential on the season. There is an 11-3 team, the Minnesota Vikings. Do you know what their point differential is this year?
Is it like 3?
2. They are 8 games over 500, and they only have a +2 point differential, which means they were actually negative going into the game against the Colts. They were -1. And then you look a little further down. You know, you've got the Raiders at +1, the Dolphins at +1.
Wow.
But 11-3, 8-6, 6-8, and they're all basically the same as far as point differential.
Wow.
You go down to the Atlanta Falcons, not far down the list, -27. The New Orleans Saints -29. You know who's right in between them? 2 5-9 teams. The 8-6 Los Angeles Chargers -28.
Wow.
So so part of it, there's 2 things I gotta say. The Falcons and Saints have shown a tremendous propensity to lose close games late. The Saints, if they had held on, they had a double-digit fourth quarter lead over the Bengals earlier this year, not that long ago. They had a double-digit fourth quarter lead over the Bucs with less than 4 minutes to play. They've shown a tremendous propensity to blow games. The Atlanta Falcons' history speaks for itself. This year has just continued the propensity to blow close games. Part of it is that good teams win close games, bad teams lose them. But so that's one thing with the Chargers, just looking at them. And I had to put them a spot ahead of the Dolphins on my ballot. But I'm like, I don't really think they're as good as their record is. They're just not consistent at all.
The first thing that comes to my mind when you say that is, yes, talent is a huge part of this game and what happens, but there's elements of luck, a lucky bounce here, there. And when your point differential is that thin, right, and you've won 11 games, like there's got to be bounces that went the right way, calls that went the right way, and eventually, pardon my French, that shit runs out.
Yeah,
like eventually you can only ride that. At the end of the day, as with most things in life, it evens out, right? I mean, if you're getting all the bounces, all the calls, eventually I think that's going to level. And when it does, it's going to be bad because Kirk Cousins is going to get blamed again.
Yeah, well, look, another 11-3 team, the Buffalo Bills, point differential +135.
Right.
Like that, it's like these teams are not the same. They may have the same record, and that's why just look at our rankings. The Bills finished number 1, and the Vikings are number 8. There's so people who are, I think sometimes people get a little too attached to the records, and look, I don't care that the Bucs beat the Cowboys in week 1. If they lined up against each other tomorrow, I think the Cowboys win by 20 points. And the Cowboys haven't shown the propensity to beat any team, including the Texans, by barely any margin for a few weeks now. So there's that.
Now,
by the way,
what's up with Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson back? Is he going to play?
I don't think so this week. I mean,
But you know what? I think Young Buck's done a decent job stepping in there, man. He's Lamar Jackson-esque, but he's like the what do they call it? The Wish version, right? Like on Amazon, it's Wish. It's a little bit young.
Yeah. My problem with him, with Huntley, is he's got I used to get so irritated. I would watch a game when Michael Vick started with the Falcons, and he had some great games and played great. When he went to the Eagles, he was outstanding as a quarterback. Yeah. A lot of his games with the Falcons, he would play like hot garbage and make 3 or 4 crazy highlight reel plays. And they'd lose the game, and all you'd see is the highlights, and you would be convinced Michael Vick was the greatest thing to ever play quarterback. And I feel like he makes some incredible plays. Earlier this year, I think Justin Fields was that, although I think he's actually taken a lot of steps forward as a passer.
The quarterback that came to my mind right there was my boy Kyler Murray.
And that's another, yeah. There are too many quarterbacks who I think, frankly, Josh Allen, his rookie year and maybe his second year, I think got some of this too, where it's like, I get a tremendously athletic play, but he was he was 13 of 30. That's not. I don't give a crap about this outstanding run where he broke 3 tackles, and I don't care about your athleticism. I care about your overall play as a quarterback. So I do think I think too many people bite on the highlight reel. With Huntley, I watched a lot of his first game where he led the comeback. I think it was against the Broncos at the very last drive. He didn't throw a ball 3 yards down. Every pass was a dump to his running back out of the backfield, like not past the line of scrimmage one time. It's like, that was just bad defense. Like, he just kept doing the same thing, and then he had a nice run. It's like that's really not. I'm not impressed by this quarterback at all. But of course, he gets the last second touchdown, and he's the hero. But that's but he is he's only 24 years old. I mean, he is athletic as hell. So I'm interested to see. I mean, he might be their starting quarterback. Lamar's a free agent after this year. Remember, that's something interesting to keep in the back of the mind too, as far as when he comes back from injury and how fast he wants to rush back. Maybe, kind of.
So we talked about the Thursday night game is super intriguing. That's it's like you're glad you got Amazon Prime for once. And so I think that's going to be a big game. The other one on the board that you just have to talk about, I mean, for everything of what it is Eagles Cowboys. That's in the division, even though there's a 3-game gap between them, there's a lot more pride. And again, I'm around Philly with this, like there's a pure hatred for the Cowboys, and the Cowboys have a pure hatred for the Eagles, and they're both playing well. And this is more about somebody trying to make a statement to the other one. So I think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Like when the Ravens and Steelers play each other, when they're good, it's that kind of game.
Yeah. Well, turnabout's fair play. If Hurts doesn't go, the Cowboys had to start Cooper Rush earlier this year against the Eagles. Gardner Minshew, I think, is a much better quarterback than Cooper Rush. Also, it's been an interesting just following the Twitter comments from some Eagles fans. A lot of them very pissed at how much he was running the ball last week against the Bears, and which I believe is when he hurt his shoulder, was on a running play. And a lot of them seem to want him to try to come back. I'll be honest. I would just say, you're out to the playoffs, buddy. We can win 1 of 3 games with Minshew. That's all we need to win. They play the Saints next week. They don't need, they can beat them with Gardner Minshew, frankly. You get home field blocked up. You rest that throwing shoulder. Make sure you're 100% when the playoffs, because, this will give you 5 weeks. They're going to get the bye week almost certainly. They take the last 3 weeks, take the bye week. You'll have a full month to heal that shoulder. I don't think there's going to be any issues with rust or anything like that with Hurts in the playoffs. Not the way he's played this year.
No, and Minshew, like you said, is a good backup. Minshew can win games, and he can do it in spurts. He gives defensive coordinators hell for 2 or 3 games till they figure out where this dude's mind and head is. Then when they figure him out, they kind of get him the same way Mike White has 1 or 2 big ones. Minshew wins one of those games easily if we're setting him back. And, it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out. As I'm scanning down through here, another one that hit me, we were talking about the Raiders, right? And only being like a game sort of out of that last playoff spot. Well, they're going to Pittsburgh this week, and both of those teams sit at 6-8. And, the unfortunate news of the passing of Franco Harris yesterday, they had a ceremony planned for Franco at halftime this weekend.
Yeah, the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception.
Yep. So
I punched my microphone in anger, Raiders fans.
So as much as I don't think they're a good team, and my feelings on the Steelers in general, that's a tough game. And whoever comes out of that is going to be sitting still a game out of the playoffs. If the Steelers somehow wiggle their way into the playoffs, I will never live it down. It will be my personal hell. I didn't even realize I wrote the Steelers off a long time ago. But
I think you're safe.
I hope.
I think the Steelers did the thing that every team should have done this year, which was if you're playing the NFC South, make hay. I talked about it with you. I don't know if it was on here or on one of our broadcasts. The Seahawks went 0-4 against the NFC South this year. They don't deserve to make the playoffs. You can't beat one of those teams.
Yeah.
And again, they convincingly got beat. They were not the better team in any of those 4 games.
No.
The Steelers won all 4 games, horrendously ugly games, because the Steelers are a really bad football team.
It's an ugly football game,
but
man.
They're, especially, since TJ Watt's come back, they're fine winning ugly. The Bucs, I think, are the only team they played without TJ Watt, which speaks a lot to how poorly the Bucs played in that game. But TJ Watt's a game wrecker, so they can win. I think the Raiders, even though, look, this weekend is going to be crazy. Looking at some of the temperatures, and I heard like the New Orleans Cleveland game, it's going to feel like not -9 degrees and have gusts possibly up to 50 miles an hour. You might be looking at a 2-0 football game. But the Raiders, no matter which direction it goes, they've got the leading rusher in the NFL in their backfield. They've got the deep threat with Devontae Adams. Matt Collins is having a good year too. I think they're going to put up too many points for the Steelers to do much. And I have to imagine the Raiders are riding on cloud 9 after that win. Like, they were written off that game. I mean, they had to come back to tie the game late. And then obviously got a gift, an early Christmas present from Jacoby Myers. But it's an interesting game. And it's a must win for the Raiders. It's interesting how differently, like, I look at those two teams. I see the Raiders, same record. I look at them as a playoff contender. And the Steelers, same record. I'm like, oh, they're not in last place, huh?
Yeah. I wrote them off weeks ago. Like, I'm just like, well, finally that losing season's coming to Pittsburgh. They should just be run over. And
this will be a losing season. It's your Christmas present on Christmas Eve night. You can watch the Steelers get their first losing season.
Finally get a losing season. Tomlin will have his first. You're welcome, Mike. Christmas gifts. Thank you, Matt Ryan. I mean, if you never take another snap in the NFL, you made your mark, buddy. We know who you are. Melting down against the Vikings the way that they did. Wow. And if you're a Colts fan anywhere around it, the most frustrating thing is that big lead that was grown was special teams and defense. So, like, those are supposed to be the cherry on top for points. But, like, their special teams and defense came out and jumped all over Minnesota and give that offense that kind of lead with the guy who was the leading rusher last year, and you completely melt down in the second half and allow Kirk Cousins and the gang to come steaming back.
The curse of Frank Reich, who was the quarterback who led the largest comeback in NFL history prior to Kirk Cousins, and was fired, of course, by the Colts not very long ago. And look, this tells you how much your opinions ebb and flow during a game. We were messaging, you, myself, and Isaac, during the Colts-Vikings game, complimenting Jeff Saturday, talking about how far the Vikings were going to plummet. Isaac said the Colts are going up, and I'm like, no, they're not. Not on my ballot. They're not. They're beating a bad football team that's finally showing how bad they are. And then all craziness breaks out. I am proud. Obviously, we all dropped the Colts to 32nd after that disgraceful display. And I do remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Colts and the Cowboys. And I said it was 21-19 going into the fourth quarter. And I'm like, the Colts can pull this out. And they it looked like a Three Stooges episode. And they gave up how many points to the Cowboys in the fourth quarter? Do you know?
No. What was it?
33 points.
I remember that game now.
So between that and that's why my 2 a.m. power rankings, I put the Colts at number 33 because that seems to be their magic number.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a dynamite. That's a dynamite seg. Right? That's a connector. I love that.
Yeah. That's find the connection somewhere. And there's a couple of games where you've got teams, the Vikings and the Giants. Like I think the Giants, they win this game, they're in real good shape to make the playoffs. Traveling to Minnesota, I assume they're going to be underdogs in that game, but look, these are two of those teams. I can guarantee it's going to be a close game because these teams don't play anything but close games. So it's interesting to keep an eye on. And really, if the Giants win, I feel like you're really, the NFC playoff picture gets a lot smaller, because I think they're pretty much in at that point. So there's some interesting matchups coming ahead in week 16. And again, I think we'll see a lot of low scoring games as the cold weather, causes some interesting scenarios, I think, this weekend.
Yeah. The other game that I'm going to watch closely is the team that I don't believe in, and I never do, but the Commanders versus the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad. That Commanders team they're a good team. And I think, if it's, baseball or basketball playoffs, best 2 out of 3, I think Washington absolutely dominates the Jets. The Giants. I love Taylor Heineke. They got Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson Jr. is running the ball well. And I try not to be too it because we watched it in the game. I don't like to be a guy that says officiating screwed whatever. But last week, the Commanders,
they screwed them. That being said, the Giants outplayed them from start to finish. I was stunned but I thought the same way. I thought Washington was going to kind of bully the Giants a little bit, and it was the opposite. The Giants really, dominated that game. Now, granted, the Commanders should have been able to at least go for 2 to try to tie the game, if not for some referee shenanigans, a couple of them.
Wow. And
it happened a couple of times. But look, they're in a tough spot though, because they lose that game. I believe they'll be 7-7-1, and if the Lions win, they're 8-7.
Yep, it's big.
So
it's really big. And the Niners, literally, like we said before, they've ripped off 7 in a row, and bringing in Mr. Irrelevant, and the offense just keeps churning.
They've clinched the playoffs, so they don't really have. They're not going to be the number 1 seed. So, they can play to try to edge out the Vikings for the 2 seed.
Yeah.
But, there's not a lot to play for the 49ers. They're going to be the 2 or the 3 seed. They've already clinched their spot in winning the West. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. It just hit me as we were talking about this. When you talk about great coaches and everything, I think people get their accolades where it's at. But I think the last name Shanahan doesn't carry as much clout as it should, right? Shanahans find a way wherever they are. Remember in Denver, all of a sudden out of nowhere was Olandis Gary, Terrell Davis. It was guys you didn't know anything about from nowhere that they plugged in, and the offense worked and they scored. In San Francisco, how many running backs did they rotate through everything that they do?
Just turn through.
And it could be Jeff Wilson. It could be Raheem Mostert. It could be Frank Gore. They had everybody and no matter what, it worked, right? And then they switched out quarterbacks. Trey Lance, he was working. It was fine. You go to Jimmy Garoppolo, it works. Jimmy falls down, Brock Purdy, it works. There's something magic about what the Shanahans do and the way that they prepare for games and game plans that I don't think gets enough credit in the NFL. And it's kind of come across me because literally everywhere that they're at, next man up doesn't hurt them at all.
Yeah.
And that's scheme and preparation.
Yeah. And this is an off-season conversation, but start thinking about it now. What are the 49ers going to do at quarterback next year if Brock Purdy wins a playoff game or 2? So
then literally just
On that note,
yeah. Hey, it's gonna give us off-season material.
Yeah, there you go. Because what happens in the playoffs makes a look. A lot of people say if Tom Brady his fumble was not the screw job didn't go to the Raiders in that game, Drew Bledsoe was going to be the quarterback for the Patriots in 2002, and Brady was going to be on the bench. Brock Purdy goes on a playoff run. You never know what they're going to decide they have to do because,
Man, you know what? We'll wrap it up with, man, I love sports and I love football. It's just great because, the stories and how it plays. This is my drama.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is unmatched. And I think the NFL especially. Well, everyone on FL Teams, make sure you're subscribed to FL Teams on YouTube. You follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And if there's anything else that I'm not hip enough to know about, follow us there too. And hey, look, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, happy holidays from all of us at FL Teams. But not Happy New Year because we're going to be back next week before New Year. So you only get a Happy New Year if you come back next week to watch our power rankings. That'll hook them in.
That's right. There's the cliffhanger. Hey, in seconding what Jeff said, any and all people out there, man, we do this for a lot of fun, but it really, it's a blessing to have anyone come in and participate, watch these shows, like these shows, share this stuff. We're just guys doing this for fun, and we appreciate every one of you who are here doing this with us every week or checking it out and sharing it with your friends. So much love and appreciation. Happy holidays, and we'll look forward to catching you before New Year's.
Absolutely. So on behalf of Jeremiah Hensley, Isaac Edelman, James Macolino, and myself, we will see you next week.